Hi, welcome to Designing Hollywood. I'm your host, Allison Fanger. Thank you so much for joining us. Our guest on Designing Hollywood today is Colin Wilkes. Originally from East Texas, Colin designed theater, opera, and puppetry before finding her home in film. Carving a name for herself in the indie film world over the last decade, Colin has designed a rich and varied body of award-winning features spanning from all genres and periods. Her work has been lauded for her attention to detail and knack for creating authentic and iconic characters. Feature highlights include 1980s set Computer Chess, restaurant comedy Support the Girls, neo-western Littlewoods, and most recently Hulu's summer hit Palm Springs. Welcome, Colin.
Thank you.
So great to have you here.
It's such a pleasure to be here. It's such an honor.
Yeah.
It's so great to have you interviewing me.
Thank you. An honor for me as well, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to talk to you about the trajectory of your career just thus far as like a next-gen costume designer and to hear your stories. Our listeners will love to hear about the exciting and innovative universe of indie film, which is its own like cauldron of creativity.
Yes,
I feel
that's
like
a really good way of putting it.
It has its own way of sort of morphing into what it needs to be, and can be so groundbreaking in its techniques because of, sheer necessity at times. So I really want to talk about that with you. And I, for one, am a little bit obsessed with the fact that you have a background in puppetry. That's amazing.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I had a really interesting, colorful background before coming to film.
Yeah,
So.
I want to hear about opera, puppetry, and your path and how you got your start.
Well, like you said, I grew up on a ranch in East Texas, and so I didn't have a lot in the way of a big cultural melting pot around me. But I did grow up with a mother who thought it was very important to get cultural enrichment and for the arts and expose me to a lot of really wonderful things. So I would go to Santa Fe every summer to visit my grandmother and go and watch the opera, and I would go and see ballet in Houston. And so there was all of these experiences that really kind of colored my excitement for costume design. And it really kind of just started when I went to school for high school. I started going to HSPVA, which is a performing arts high school in Houston.
Oh,
so my mom moved me to Houston, and that's kind of where my exploration of all of it started. And of course, it was like techie, very rudimentary, understanding the collaborative process of theater and everything like that. But it really blossomed into this bigger thing for me where I became fascinated with art and understanding the clothed body in art and color and looking at how light affected color and understanding it from this different perspective. And then that all kind of segued into my experience when I went to school, because I ended up going to school for costume design at Cal Arts. And I really got to experiment there, and they really fostered an environment that was about exploring the craft holistically in all of these different waves of collaborating through puppetry and through opera. And so there were all these really cool experiences I got to do, experimenting with the performance art and really understanding costume design as this really integral part of storytelling.
Yeah.
So I had a different kind of way about understanding it and coming into the film world, but everything, all the pieces kind of fell together and made sense when I started working in film.
Right. So when did you decide then you came to Cal Arts, you came to California to go to Cal Arts, right?
Well, I think that it really started when I was being inundated with all of these incredible performances. Like going to the opera in Santa Fe was so big and was my main attraction, like the thing I wanted to do every year, every summer. And so that kind of planted the seed, and then everything came to fruition. Like I would say maybe the first opera I designed that was just this huge, like Baroque opera called Platé. It was like this French Baroque opera. And it had so many moving parts, and it was about this frog and this like little frog nymph. And it was just so magical and crazy, but there was so much work that went into it. And of course, in theater, it's so highly collaborative, but you have a totally different time frame that you're working and collaborating with people. So it really kind of solidified there when I was able to be around my collaborators and see it all come to life.
Right. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, the opera is like, I was telling you on the phone, I feel like people that are trained in opera, and I think I know this because I did do a show in Santa Fe one time, and
Oh,
I realized
cool.
that's where that came from when you just said Santa Fe
Yeah.
opera, is that the people that work in opera are so well trained.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I interned at the opera here, the LA Opera here, and
Ah,
I really learned just the meticulous attention to detail there, and just like how everything, little thing counts, from notions and buttons. And there's such a, it's interesting because you don't see it on the grand scale of theater, right? But
Right.
you do get to appreciate it in this
Yeah.
other way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And people love it who do it.
Oh,
So it's so
absolutely.
cool. And
Yeah.
you kind of have to, right?
You do. I know, with any of this,
Yeah,
right? But like
true.
for me, film is just way more of a fun, fast-paced, exciting thrill.
Yeah. Well, it goes that path. So was
Yeah.
there a specific moment when you knew you wanted to be a designer?
It's the only thing I can remember that I wanted to do. I mean, there was really nothing else. I just think that I've always loved it. I sketched from a really early age, and so I was always doing art. And when I was always drawing people, and I was always drawing costumes on people and thinking about their backstory and thinking about what kind of music they would listen to or where they lived. So it always kind of
Totally.
had its own life. And then that all just made sense when I was like, oh, yeah, reading a script for the first time, or everything kind of pieced together.
That's so cool. I
Yeah.
love it. Were there any specific designers who you studied, who inspired you, or who you worked with that you feel like you really learned a lot from?
You know, I feel really grateful that I kind of came up the way I did, because I was able to work under some really incredible costume designers, but also just peers, like seamstresses that had fascinating careers prior to coming to film, or just other set costumers. I mean, that's what's so wonderful about our industry. I think there's so many interesting people with interesting backstories. But
Totally.
of course, there were people that influenced me deeply, like Aggie Rogers, who is just like one of my favorites. And I am so, she encourages me. I mean, I finally got to meet her, and she's been such a like advocate for younger designers and for keeping the ethics of the industry tantamount and important. And I really appreciate that about her. And of course, her vast body of work, which is just so complex and beautiful.
Yeah, I love her.
Yeah, deeply influencing. And then, people that I worked with, like Kate Adair has such a way with people and with her crew that shows such an amount of grace. So it's interesting because it's like there's two facets of it, right? Like being a designer, you have to know how to be a really good leader and be good with your crew. And I mean, they say you're only as good as your crew are, and I believe that.
True.
And so, yeah, I've learned both the creative and the kind of like structural grounding points of being a good designer from a lot of different people. Nina Proctor is another person that was kind of a mentor to me and was really fantastic. And I learned about being resourceful from her.
That's good.
And
Important.
yeah, and like taking a piece of fabric and making it, a totally different thing by putting different layers of wax, or like just playing with things. And so that's so valuable, I think, for a designer, especially coming up in the indie world, is like, okay, what can this other thing be or become?
Yeah, for no money.
Absolutely.
Just stay up all night.
I know.
So that kind of brings us to the next thing, was about the formal training in costume design, which you actually already answered.
Yeah.
And then one thing I want to talk about with you is that I saw on your IMDb that you worked in departments as an ager dyer, as a seamstress, as a key, and a ACD, and all those different departments, which I think is amazing because it makes you have a really, like we were just saying, a really comprehensive view of the department, and you understand what everybody's doing. It's so important as a designer and a leader to know and respect other people's positions.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say, and I also saw in there all your indie films. So I was wondering, how did you make that work? You were doing indie films and what kind of shows?
Well, I think the kind of trajectory for me is like I was very intentional about what I was taking at certain points too. I wanted to make sure that I was not getting burnout on doing this one thing, being a set costumer, or not staying in a position too long because I was very intent on designing. So I would do like one big show and then do like 3 indies that year. Or I would just trying to really keep it fresh too. But I knew how important being a costumer and an ager dyer and being a seamstress would be for the like end goal.
Completely.
And just like understanding, like I was saying yesterday, timelines and the pressure that the other crew members are on to get things done and expectation levels. And I think it just like, I love my set. I mean, we were talking about this yesterday, but like, I love my set team so much because, like you were saying, they're the last set of eyes before it goes on camera.
Exactly.
And they're so integral to making sure those last few fixes are just like perfect.
Exactly. Because they're there watching the whole time and we aren't. So
they are.
And very important.
It's, yeah. And just everything up to that too, even the background. I mean, that was something that Kate Adair really instilled in my ethics in working with background, is just thinking about them as real humans with backgrounds, and like they are coloring the world just as anything as in that frame, right? And like just understanding how to group people together and to think about color and think about the frame as a picture.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so like our background costumers are just as valuable as our set costumers and our ager dyers. And
definitely, I've been known to get in there and talk to the ADs about where they're placing people.
Exactly. Oh yeah, absolutely. And that is a great thing to learn. So yeah, I keyed for, and I did background, and I was an ager dyer, and I did all these things that really did inform doing it all, which is what you are doing in some indie circumstances.
Yeah,
right. Like
I'm sure
you are all of those positions.
I know.
And then you have like 2 weeks of prep, and you have like $500. I mean, that is on the very low end of things, but it really, they informed each other, and I'm so grateful for all of those experiences. And working.
You got to just say yes and do it.
You do. And then, you know, Caroline Eslin is also another fantastic costume designer that has really kind of instilled a lot of good values in my design practice. But she was just like, you got to start saying no to certain things, right? And so and just saying no to not designing anymore, and that's a big step too. Is like, no, this is kind of when it stops, and I'm going to focus on just designing now, you know?
Yeah. You're definitely ready.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So.
Okay, so let's talk about indie film a little bit.
Yeah.
We did talk just a little bit about how you started on that path, but let's talk about, you know, the world of indie film and the unique challenges surrounding design on a shoestring budget and just indie film in general. Just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I think it doesn't really change much because we all know what it's like to work for like 18 hours, paid or unpaid, right? Yeah. I mean, it's just like, you know, you have to get the job done no matter what, and you'll do anything it takes.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of preying on the very passionate designer when you're doing indies, because you know that they're going to give it 110% no matter what. So I think that each project came with its own, when I was first starting out, really, it came with its own set of like really specific challenges. And for instance, one of my first films I did, Computer Chess, in 2010, with a director that I worked with for the past decade now, Andrew Bujalski. I had $2,000, and I had 5 weeks though. I mean, and mind you, this was for a back end deal. I was not even getting paid. So it was like, I just knew that this was going to be an incredible project, and it was so strange and out there. And we were shooting on this 1980 Sony Portapak. So already it had the world inherently built into what the camera we were using is.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And so I was just going and digging through bins for maybe like 6 hours a day through the Goodwill bins.
Oh my God.
And just like trying to piece everything together. And so with time, it granted me to be able to do it for less money, right?
Right, totally.
And so those were the kind of things that did allow me to be successful in these really resourceful ways, I think. And then on my very first movie, I I went through my dad's closet and I went through my grandma's closet, and pretty much everything on camera is from their closet from 1980s, 90s.
Wait, which movie was that?
And this is called Natural Selection.
Oh.
And I had maybe 5 days and $500.
I love that. I still go into my own closet sometimes, by the way. Because if there's that perfect piece you're looking for and you're like, you know what? I think I actually have that piece.
It's so true.
Just bring it.
Yeah. Or if it just starts, if the character just starts with this thing. I mean, in Palm Springs, there was this character, Nana, who is played by June Squibb, who is just like absolutely fantastic. And she is wearing this like sparkly little number. It's like her little get up. She's in her late 80s.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
The one who comes up at the end again. Yeah.
And so I took it started with my grandma's brooch, and it was just like this kind of gaudy, tacky piece, but you could tell it was probably like a touching thing for her to have.
Yeah.
Like she's had it forever.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's neat to be able to kind of like reference your own world first.
Absolutely.
Because that's where it all comes from. Like all of our experiences, my background growing up in rural East Texas has colored like my ability to do certain projects, you know?
Absolutely.
And I'm sure with you too. I mean, you grew up in Minnesota.
I did.
So there's like such a different world there that informs, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I've been having a lot of conversations about that actually, about kind of getting down to the basis of your own personal like aesthetic and style, and how much is informed by, you know, your experience growing up or your parents or whatever. So that's like, but it's the eyes through which we see the world, right?
Right.
It comes from all of our backgrounds. So okay, let's keep talking about your stuff here. So I often find that I learn something new on every project, and I'm constantly learning and evolving. Is this the case for you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's why this filmmaking is so exciting and fresh all the time, right? Like you're getting to meet new people and work with new actors and work with new crew members and go to new places. I mean, that's one of my favorite things is going on location and doing new jobs and like figuring out the down and dirties of, you know, like the Bruce at the store downtown that has the good suits in the back. And like, there's so many treasures that come with that. And like, I don't know any other industry that really gets to do that and dig their heels in this really immersive way. Like you're in it.
Yeah.
And so it's, inherently I learned so much from every project, and it's also valuable for the next project.
Yeah.
Like even just resources, you know, which are constantly evolving, and like the tools in which we do things are constantly evolving. The internet, the places we shop, especially after COVID, like a lot of stores have been closed. So it's like finding the new places to go, so many.
So many of my older gen stores are just
I know. And it's really, really sad to see. I know. Because those relationships are also what is so valuable, right?
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
I love having those relationships, and it's sad to see and feel like I can't. I'm helpless.
Yeah. I love what you said about going on location, because I haven't gone, like we talked about yesterday, I haven't gone on location in a long time because I had my kids and was home. But when I did go on location, that was my favorite thing also. Yeah. I loved going into a strange, you know, city, town, usually small town or something in the middle of nowhere that I would have ever visited before. Yeah. And being in this sort of, you know, other world and getting to know the people and studying what they wear. Yeah. Because absolutely, that just helps you in what, you know, what you were just talking about before too. Like you see things around in your environment that you might not have thought of because you're there, you're in it. You're like living it and notice every little detail. Right. Yeah. And I think it's important when you are on location. Well, often like if I'm on a job, it is probably about that area anyway. So it's good to get out and see, like you're saying, like see how they dress. And I mean, I think, that's the other thing. I mean, even just beyond learning something new on every project, just using like the visual landscape of going to the airport and the kind of people that occupy. I'm constantly taking pictures of people. Me too. Yeah. And like I have like a little totally folder that I'm like research. And then if I need to revisit like getting character inspiration, I just go through all of these. And I do that all the time. Yeah. I'm always like, excuse me, can I take your photo? Exactly. They're usually, sometimes I feel intimidated to ask them, but like they're usually very happy.
Yes.
And it's a little thrill for them. They feel
Yeah.
like they've been noticed,
Yes, and totally flattered that you
Yeah.
find them inspiring.
Yeah, exactly. My kids are always like, "Stop it, Mom.
Oh,
Don't do
sure,
that. What are you
right,
doing?
right.
Embarrassing us." Okay, so let's talk about your process from
Mhm.
getting script to camera ready.
Mhm.
So researching, designing, sketching, your collaborations with writers, actors, producers, and any very significant collaborations that come to mind that you feel that were especially, important for you.
Yeah. Well, I think it's different for every project, which I'm sure you
Yeah.
totally get to, right? A lot of it starts for me because I think I started in this kind of roundabout way and thinking about costume as art and this like very abstract conceptual thing. Um, so I start with like paintings or music, and that was one of the best things about Palm Springs because I found that Max and I kind of like thought and were generating ideas from this very like colorful mix and match world of having a playlist that you listen to that's inspiring, having art that you're looking at that you're taking something from. So it's like pretty a conceptual start for me. I like to kind of keep it there because I think that's where the gems come from, right? And
Agree.
like the good ideas.
Yeah.
And then from there, I'll sketch, and often it's like gestural things, and that'll kind of give me an idea of like shapes that I think are good. I mean, it's just still very like loose and balance of like what this person should wear on top and bottom, and then I kind of go into color. But then a lot of the time I don't have that time and that luxury. So it's going and just shopping and getting out in the world. But then as far as collaborating, I mean, I really, of course, like to really get in with the production designer and DP because there's so much gold that happens in those conversations as well.
Yeah.
And just throwing around ideas. I mean, one of my first conversations with Max and Jason, who was the production designer on Palm Springs, was just like, I mean, they're both wildly hilarious too, so that helps, when you're working with really funny people on a funny movie. But Jason especially, he was throwing out really great ideas about
Jason
Spuds. He was the production designer, and he was throwing out great ideas about Spuds, who I was like, this guy needs to live on the fringe. Like he is one of those people in Slab City. Like and then he was like, yeah, he's probably like a conspiracy theorist and a flat earther. And I was like, of course. And he needs to wear a shirt. So we made this flat earther shirt for him. And
so
there's lots of like little gems that didn't totally make it, but it still created the story and the character.
Yeah. Do you find that when you conceive of a character or start to conceive of a character through the script, do you modify once you get an actor to fill the role?
Well, that's always the difficult part, right?
Yeah.
Like that's always the like moment of truth. I mean, you can shop all day, and then also I really like to have conversations with the actors.
Yeah, absolutely.
And often they have great ideas. But then it's the moment of truth when you go into the fitting, and the other thing that you didn't really think would works.
Yeah.
And then you take off from there.
Yeah. I find that I can't completely get I can conceive of an idea, but it really changes form sometimes depending on who's playing it. Because if the actor comes in with a lot of, like in the case of the woman who played Sarah, and we're going to get to Palm Springs next, but like she probably brought a lot of edge already because she seems like just that kind of a person. So you might not have had, you can draw back a little bit on what you need to inform because she's already doing part of that work just by virtue of being her her like natural being.
Exactly.
So I always find I have to kind of balance it. How much do I need to do? How much story do I need to tell? How much are they going to tell? And then you find that perfect, place.
Yeah.
The magic place where
so
they
true.
feel comfortable. You are happy. It's all good.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so let's talk about Palm Springs. So how did this project come before you?
My agent sent me the script and I read it and was like seeing the whole world unfold. And I don't know if I'm sure you've had this happen where you're just like, this was made for me and I'm doing this,
Yes.
So, there was just so many little funny bits that I was thinking of that were happening as I was reading it, even the first time. And it was just one of the first scripts that I had literally laughed out loud like 15 times in the first 12 minutes.
Right.
And it was just so rich. You could tell that they had really marinated with these. Andy, Sierra, and Max had really marinated with these ideas, and like so much was based off of real life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I worked really hard, and I boarded the hell out of that, and like just made boards for every single character for my interview, and walked in and was like, this is what I think needs to happen with Nyles's shirt. I think it needs to be like a yellow short, this mustard Frenchie's yellow mustard short, and just very specific ideas that I had.
Oh yeah, there's the shorts.
Yeah, and yeah, that's a great example of just like how Jason, our production designer, played off of everything so well. I mean, who else looks that great on a pizza float?
I know, it was so good.
Andy can pull it off
He
too.
looked amazing.
But yeah, so I totally forgot what the thread that I was talking about, but
you're talking about your meeting and how you just killed it with your
Yes.
amazing boards because you were so inspired by the
Yes.
script, and that is the perfect story.
Yes, yeah, and
Yeah.
just like little anecdotes on other things too, like about character, and bringing
Mhm.
those into meetings I find so valuable, just like and riffing off of that about who is this person, and kind of developing in those meetings.
Yeah.
I think was gold for me.
That's
to get the
amazing.
job.
That's a good story. I love it. So I want to talk about other elements that you like, that you got the inspirations that you used along the way for each character. Just, Nyles, Sarah, Trevor, that suit was beyond. I love how you had it made, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, talk about it, because
yeah.
I read a little bit about it and I was like, that's perfection. But
I'm
talk
so
about
glad.
each of them.
Yeah. Okay. So the let's see, what was the first part?
Well,
of
you
that?
started
Because I had so many ideas.
You started talk. Oh my gosh, my earring fell off. You started to talk a little bit already about Nyles.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Sarah,
Okay.
because she has a little arc, I feel like.
Right.
Yeah.
She does.
Yeah.
So we see, first we see Sarah wake up, and there's got to be she's got to be a bit of an enigma as to why she's wearing what she's wearing, because we don't find out until later. But I really wanted it to be simple, but really kind of effortless and thrown together. I wanted to make something that didn't look like you couldn't wear. You could buy it off the rack. That was super important to me with all of this. And I think just generally with the movie, I was drawing from a lot of films that had inspired me that were iconic. And
Like what? Which ones were your particulars for this?
well,
Curious.
let's see. True Romance was a big one. That specific color blue-green that Patricia Arquette wears. I think she's wearing the bikini top with the cow print skirt.
Yes.
That was kind of like my touchstone here.
I love that.
And then for Nyles, I of course looked at Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet.
Of course.
And yes, it's a and for Trevor's blue suit, there was like a little nod to Punch Drunk Love. So there were all these kind of Easter eggs, for lack of a better word, that I was just doing nods to all the classics. And I think that was something that Max and I really wanted to ground with the costumes, as far as making something that was not going to date quickly, and that because it is about a time loop, inherently you have to make something that is going to be watchable in 5 years, so it doesn't look like I'm watching something from the early 2000s, which is now very popular, right? Like all of that.
Right.
So I wanted it to look kind of timeless in that way. And then, yeah, the customization, and I would change like hem length. Like I wanted Nyles' shorts to be above the knee, so it's kind of like an awkward length and it doesn't look totally attractive. And we over-dyed these shorts to be black, so I wanted everything to look a little off and like custom. We custom made this shirt, and a dear friend of mine made this graphic that was a nod to all the 80s.
Punk.
Yeah.
No, it's perfect.
Right,
It's so
cool.
perfect. And I figure just by nature of, this film all taking place over and over again the same day, you had to have, many multiples, so probably
Yes.
purchasing off the rack wasn't always an option.
Exactly. Right. And well,
Yeah.
and that's what it kind of came down to. I really wanted to use these fantastic dead stock 1950s Aloha shirts. Well, I mean, I guess they were Hawaiian
Right.
shirts. And I just couldn't find that perfect, because when
I was
you
just
need
gonna say, where did you find
multiples,
those?
they were on eBay, and I was like praying. I mean, I got
That's-
so many different options of shirts that we could buy in multiples, because I was just like, I don't
Yeah.
know what's going to work, and it has to be perfect
Yes.
with her stuff. And so I ended up finding these incredible, like, tiger, very kind of gaudy, but it didn't totally work. And the one that we ended up choosing was very timeless, based off of like a very classic shape,
Mhm.
and it was Polo Ralph Lauren, and it had like the patch pockets that
Yeah.
were kind of classic, which I think really worked, and that
Yeah.
color red really popped too.
Yeah, it was great. It was perfect. And you had to probably, like, I find with the patterns, because I make those shirts for Jane, you have
Yes.
to like move your
Exactly.
prints around a little bit to
Yeah.
match.
Mhm.
My supervisor is always like, that's not a double.
I know.
I'm like,
I know.
it's a double.
I know. Yeah, I always
She's
feel
like,
like
"No, it's not."
that's the supervisor's job 100%, is like, that is not a good double. And I'm like, it's
I'm like,
fine.
no one's gonna see that.
Yes.
No.
So we had to narrow it down.
Because I like it, so I want to use it. It's always because
Yeah.
of that. But then you can move it around. I'm sure you got enough, so you were able to move it around
Yes.
to be good enough, because you obviously don't want to have it be way off. But you
Yes.
can figure it out.
No, but it was a challenge for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, so talk a little bit more about Sarah and how like you plugged in the two different looks in the different times of her character arc.
Well, I think we kind of wanted to see the softer side, and we wanted to see her make the effort and we wanted to see her more feminine aspects, right? Like this is really hard. The textures are hard and washed out, and it is kind of just the gesture of her putting on the bridesmaid's dress, which in theory Tala had picked for her.
Right.
And then she goes into the cave. And also, I mean, what is better than wearing dynamite around your chest and blowing yourself up in a gown,
It was great.
Yeah. So, and I wanted, that color was so great on her. It was rich. It was a little more pure. It was, as if she'd really kind of come full circle.
Yeah.
And
at the end.
Yes, at the end.
Yeah, she put it back on at the end to go into the cave.
Yes. And she also puts on, I mean, these are small little details, but she also puts on the hair ornament that she hadn't worn prior. So there's just different things that were just like, okay, this is where we're landing with her. And it's sweet. And she's really kind of come full circle.
She's ready to blow herself up.
She's ready to blow herself up.
Yeah. Better
with
brush
the
her
goat.
hair and put the tiara on.
Exactly.
No, it was great. It was
Story.
perfect. Okay, so in my work, I find myself really focused on colors and how they work in a certain environment of light and location. And we talked about that a little bit already. But and I always ask, like, where are we shooting this and where is it supposed to be taking place? And Palm Springs is such a specific aesthetic.
Yeah.
And the color palette complements the nature of the light in the Palm Springs desert.
Yeah.
And, I know you didn't actually shoot in Palm Springs. And I really felt like when I looked it up and saw that it was in Santa Clarita, I really felt like your color choices really sold Palm Springs for me.
Thank you.
In a really strong way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
talk about the colors and how you.
Well, I think that's another one with Jason that we had to really work together on selling this, because we at first were going to, if my memory serves me right, it feels like a lifetime ago, like no puns are. But we were supposed to be shooting in Palm Springs at some point, and then something happened, we couldn't, and so we were like, this is gonna have to sell.
Yeah.
So there's the quality of light that exists in the desert is so different.
Exactly.
And that was something that was so, like, Max sent a beautiful lookbook to me at the beginning, and it really had a lot of these images that were of light in the desert and on reflecting off of different colors and things like that. And so that really inspired me to think about how the light in Palm Springs looks and affects colors, and also just the colors that are there that feel like they've been there forever,
that look good
right?
in the environment.
Exactly.
That's why people end up wearing them.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And just like that yellow that exists there,
Yeah.
that's, like a little bit faded. Everything's a little bit faded, a
Yeah.
little bit dated, and
Mhm.
feels like it's right out of that pocket of, 50s and 60s
Totally.
and a little bit of 70s.
Yeah.
So we wanted to use a lot of that palette, because I think that also I was looking at a lot of wedding blogs, and that was a huge thing, is to use these, as far as the wedding palette, a lot of dead flowers and a lot of washed out kind of drab colors with the dusty roses that
Mhm.
pop in the desert. So it was a lot of like kind of,
Interesting.
piecing it all together.
Mhm.
But we didn't want to make the wedding feel like it was out of place. And that was a really delicate thing with
Yeah.
working with, our set decorator and I mean, there's this very angular, as you see here, this very angular, like, what do you call that? Just like altarpiece.
Oh.
And so we matched all of that. Floral crown is all real florals,
Oh.
which was, I don't know why I chose to do that, but I was just like, authentic. It's going to help her character. And
oh my God, how
so
many did you have to make at night?
3. But let me tell
Oh.
you, I was the one there at the end of the night because I felt so guilty. I would come back and I would like pick all of the, and of course we couldn't find those flowers. So I had to go to like, my poor PA had to go to like 5 different Whole Foods one day because we could not find the flowers to make them patch in the new crown.
Oh my
But
God.
anyway, we really worked on coordinating the floral colors of the altar pieces and the centerpieces, and also just, I mean, the detail of her dress with that laser cut lace, which is so fantastic.
Yeah, it's really pretty.
Yeah, and there was a lot of macrame going on, so there was just a little bit of that.
Mhm.
And it all felt very boho and still of the world of Palm Springs,
Yeah.
but capturing that and also making sure that it felt like this group of people would want to have a wedding here, this destination wedding,
Yeah.
was important.
Yeah.
Of course, the nudie suit's a bit of just like a throw in, and nothing has to make sense with there. So
It could not be more genius, and it fits so well. You had it made for him, yeah?
I did. And Fort Lonesome is this really fantastic group of women and men down in Austin, and they do like Diplo's nudie suits and a lot of just custom nudie suits. And this was like a pared down version because really we didn't have a lot of time and up against money at that time, because you have to take a whole suit apart, and we didn't have time to build this suit. So I had her just stitch it through the lining too. And I was just praying that he wouldn't run or do anything that like you're going to see the inside of it.
Oh my God.
Because I knew it would just look so gold if we had all of that together, and as we could get as much on, especially with the bedazzled. I knew that that's really going to sell.
You were right.
Sell it.
Wait, did it say Candyman on the back, or did you add
Candyman.
that?
I was listening to the Grateful Dead. I don't even know how it came up, but like I don't listen to the Dead all the time, but it just like it was. I listened to
Dead,
Candyman,
but that's so genius that it said Candyman on the back.
Yes.
That didn't get enough camera time,
It
in
did
my opinion.
not. And I mean, Chris, who is the actor, he's Australian, and I was like, at first I was like, I don't know if he can pull this off. I mean, not because he's Australian, but like he's so good looking, and it was supposed to look a little, but he just walked into the thing. And
yeah, I love
when
cut.
it comes to life.
The cut, because you made it not like modern.
Right, exactly. And I wanted it to just be almost uncomfortably too slim. But yeah, he looked fantastic, and he of course wanted it. And we paired it with a really bad polyester, like big collar
shirt.
Yeah, shirt.
And the bolo
that he doesn't wear correctly. Yeah, and I painted that little thing with nail polish on the day because I was like, he needs a dot of red.
Wait, what little thing?
This little stone that's in his bolo.
Oh, in the bolo. Oh, perfect. Oh, it's so good.
Little details.
I love it. It matters a lot.
All of those do. Yeah,
totally.
Especially, we get to see a lot of this, close-ups and in something like this, I knew the frames were going to be a lot more tight.
It never doesn't matter.
It never does matter.
I've thought sometimes something wasn't going to matter, and it always matters.
I know, right?
Always, yeah.
And you just pat yourself on the back when
Yeah.
you watch it.
You're like,
and
I'm
see
glad
it.
I went that extra mile in that moment because it really matters.
Yes,
You know? Yeah.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a little off, but we kind of touched on it. The dresses and the colors. I just kind of want to know, I guess, for myself, was your choice for the bridesmaid dresses, because they were like the pink, which was to pick up on the bohemian and the flower crown and everything, but you had them all different, which is like a modern wedding choice. But was that a modern wedding choice, or was that like a budget choice for you?
Oh, that's a really good question. It was a modern wedding choice, and they all came from the same collection that was being released. And I was looking high and low because there's so many bad bridesmaids dresses out there. And this was my first wedding movie. So I was, and like, for some reason, my girlfriends, I think because they're all filmmakers, well, I'm not going to say that because that's not fair, but like, no one's really getting married. We'll just say that, you know? So I haven't been to a ton of weddings. And, but I did notice that the ones that I was going to, my girlfriends were like, wear whatever you want. And I felt like that also was something that Tala would have wanted, because she's just like a giving, loving, good human. And we want to see that. And so she probably gave them a variation of dresses to choose from, and
or palette.
A palette, yes. And so it just so happened that I did dig all of the colors from this world, and it really did pick up on that kind of like arid landscape that was Palmdale as Palm Springs.
Palmdale. Oh Lord. Okay, so let's talk about the schedule of this film. I'm really curious to know. It was a low budget film.
Yeah.
So how many days did you guys film?
Well, I thought surely that we were going to have like at least 30 or 35, and we had, I think, 21. Oh my! I know. I don't think I've ever shot a feature in 21 days, and it was a lot. I mean, and to be fair, I had an incredible crew. I had one set costumer. I had one truck costumer. I mean, and it was cold at night. And so, my set costumer, Bridget Chapman, she's fantastic. She just was like getting all of the coats and running around. And then there were changes in the middle of the day. And then there's gags, like Andy's getting shot with arrows and he's in his boxers. It's freezing cold. And I mean, this is funny because like this was a warming coat of his, this red one that is now everyone's like, where can I get that coat? And I was like, we rented it. It's from, and of course they both wanted their warming coats. I mean, this was just like a warming coat in theory that then turned into a costume. Right. So now I'm always like, I'm going to get them camera warming coats that maybe can, because this I learned.
Worked out though.
I know.
It wasn't one of those like full length black giant.
Exactly.
Horrible ones.
Yeah, like a dive coat or something. Terrible. Yeah. So
it worked.
Yeah.
That was good. That's good. I'm happy that worked. So you did 21 days. That's really short.
Yes, it was very short.
That's really short. What about your budget?
My budget I was very grateful that the producers were so supportive and making sure that this looked good.
Oh, that's good. So you had what you needed to work
with. I did end up having what I needed, and I was super, super grateful to Becky, and Andy too. I mean, was integral in the creative process because it was their company, and so I mean that goes so far, right? When you don't have time, you need money.
Yeah.
And you have to have one or the other.
Yeah. So do you feel like the schedule like helped you or hindered you in your process?
Hindered. Yeah. 100%.
No question.
Yeah. No, I mean, at least casting they had pretty much everything cast. And I got all the actors were local, so I got them early.
That's good.
And we could really iron out any of the details that needed to happen. And I was able to do those final touches, which was really great.
That's great.
But yeah, I think all of those small things that feel so small are so big, when you don't have the time or the money, and especially the casting issue, which Now it's a whole other thing.
I know. I was thinking about that with COVID.
Yeah.
It can't be that way.
It can't.
Yeah.
But then you can't, like, when you try to demand it, it just sometimes doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
They're like, yeah, of course we won't late
Yeah,
cast.
of
And then they
course.
still do.
Yeah. It's a hard one to fight. But
It is.
yeah.
Well, we'll talk about COVID in a minute.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the difference between the two sisters, because I always like familial relationships and helping to tell that story through, our part of it. So talk about that a little bit, and let's talk about the wedding dress. You touched on it a little bit, but I'm wondering about finding a wedding dress in probably what was a short time.
Yes. Yeah.
And in doubles, I'm going to guess.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, the wedding dress kind of came to me. One of my PAs was actually scrolling through her Instagram, and because we had all been talking about wedding dresses and looking for wedding dresses, I think it popped up.
Yeah, of course.
And right, I mean, there's some good things about being watched all the time, I guess, and clickbait.
Yeah.
So yeah, and she was like, "Have you seen these dresses? It's this little sister-owned bridal boutique, and I'm all about supporting, like smaller."
Me too.
Yeah, and
100%.
it's so, especially now, I'm like, yes, we've got to start thinking about this fast fashion issue. Anyway, so yeah, we found this great little bridal boutique in Orange County, and they had everything that felt like it encapsulated what I was looking for, which was just timeless, but also really romantic and interesting and soft, so it was like the perfect balance of all of that.
It's really perfect on her.
Yeah. And I mean, the only other dress was that white robe, and then I wanted to keep that really simple.
Yeah.
So we don't see them really next to each other. So as far as contrasting them, it was like I really had to make sure that Sarah's outfit for her casual change was really something that was going to be like very different than what you would think.
Yeah, a lot of information.
Exactly.
Yeah,
right.
About
her.
That's
the thing with all of this, when you see one outfit, right? Like you have to make sure you're embodying a lot, and that the stakes are higher.
Yes. Oh my God, for sure.
Yeah. So I think that with that hero change, I really had my work cut out for me, and wanted to make it so different than anything in her world that she would have created with this wedding.
Yeah. I forgot to ask you about the boots.
Oh,
Sarah's boots.
Remember
I said I was going to ask you about that?
And
why those boots? I'm curious.
I saw them and I fell in love. And I also have a thing for red boots. I mean, there was also something about, Wizard of Oz, like going home.
I love it.
Yeah, and wearing the ruby slippers and like this idea of being lost and then being found. So there was all these kind of like things.
Great.
And then I just thought it was like a really badass thing. Like, yeah, you throw on your boots with your shorts and you don't have socks on. And she's like marching through the desert.
That was I was like, they were such a kind of like, whatever, I'll just wear these boots because they're sitting by the door on my way out.
Totally.
Right?
And that's kind of like what I thought. I mean, when she had snuck into, this is spoiler, but when she had snuck into Abe's room, that was at the end of the night. She was probably really drunk and threw on an outfit. And this is what it is.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
I was like, those are just such a, like, they said so much about her personality to me.
Yes.
And when she put those boots with that outfit.
Yeah. Yeah. And when Cristin saw him, she was like, oh my God, these boots. And Max was like, really? She was like, absolutely. And she is such a like firecracker and so smart and thoughtful about her character, which always makes, like everything so much more special and textured and really gives a lot of room for play.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. So she really brought a lot
good
to the table there too.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought about the boots. So I'm happy we got that burning question answered. So we talked about the production designer and the wedding.
Yes.
We did talk about that a little bit. And then there was the moment at Nyles' birthday party that was really sweet moment when she wore the curtain of
tinsel.
What is that? Tinsel
yes,
curtain.
I like that tinsel of curtain.
Right?
That reminds me of that Carol Burnett moment where she's wearing the curtain rod. You know what I'm talking about? Bob Mackie did.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah. No, that was a fun one too. I was just I was like, how can we spice all of this up? I mean, that's the other challenge when you're dressing for a day on loop, generally, right? Like, we all do that.
Mhm.
But
Yep.
we
Never.
yeah. It's just I had to really think about how we could vary it up and really think about how the viewer was participating in their journey, and like keeping it a little fresh too,
Yeah.
and keeping it fresh for them, because they
Yeah.
would, and they would want a sense of dress up, and like they're in this crazy fucking world.
Yeah.
They're gonna wild it up. I hope I can cuss.
And they were
But yeah.
having fun. Like that was
Yeah.
during that whole like montage of them having so
Exactly.
much fun with each other, and it was like such a sweet moment.
It was.
And the earrings,
Oh yes,
those
and
were perfect.
that was a last minute thing
Oh my
where
God.
I was in Palmdale just
No way.
shopping away. I think there's some really, but also good mall out there, which is
Oh.
so strange because they have at Dillard's. I'm almost positive.
Oh,
And which I love Dillard's. And anyway, so they had a Forever 21 that was going out of business. So they had lots of things that were like so dated.
oh, Dillard's, and I love a dead stock too.
Yes, right.
I love a dead stock
Me
because
too.
yeah, that's the best part of going on location.
Mm-hmm.
Find
Oh,
those
so true.
stores with
Yeah.
the dead stock in the back, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we need to start wrapping it up a little
Okay.
bit, but let's just talk about, let's talk about COVID for a second,
Yeah.
because you did just do a show in the COVID world,
Mm-hmm.
and then also what's next for you?
Yeah. Well, so I finished the last 2 episodes. I took over for a girlfriend of mine who had a baby on Panic, which is an Amazon series that'll be out hopefully in the spring.
Mhm.
And it was in Austin, and it was really challenging. I have to say that production did such a fantastic job, like I was telling you, in making sure that we all felt really safe. And I think that it is a really challenging time to go out in the world and make sure that our department feels comfortable and that everyone feels comfortable. We were getting tested daily. There was a sanitation crew that was spraying everything to sanitize it at the end of all day, every day, essentially, like doorknobs, everything. And then we noticed that what they were wiping down everything with was bleaching the clothes.
Oh no.
Yes, it was so crazy. So there was like this one specific moment where my set customers were like, these kids, the stand-ins were there on the trampoline, and then the crew came in and wiped it down, and then the actors got on the trampoline, and then they got up and like their entire backs were bleached. And this was a costume we were just establishing, and it worked for the next 2 days. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I mean, that is to say that there are new challenges that like we have to just be like really, what I found was we have to just be really like adaptable and remember why we're here. And like you said yesterday when we were talking, it's just so important to keep it light, let people feel like they have their own lives outside of this, right?
Oh yeah, the work-life balance.
The work-life balance.
Mhm.
But that now is more than ever, I think, is so important because we have to be healthy because we're working in this world.
Exactly. It sort of shocked us into a different kind of reality of what we're doing, which is work and entertainment.
Yes.
And then
exactly.
there's like health and life. And so it does sort of delineate even further.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We were talking about, just giving respect to people's lives.
Absolutely.
Also. So this has definitely magnified that.
Yes, exactly.
In a
And
way.
yeah, I mean, we already work so many hours, and just
Were the hours shorter for you because of the COVID?
No.
Oh,
not really.
Hmm.
I mean,
I thought they were going to.
I thought they were.
Heard they were. I mean,
we definitely thought they were too, but I think we also needed to get it, and so they weren't crazy. I mean, they weren't like 20 hours or 18 hours.
No,
or
18-hour
16.
days.
Yeah. But
they weren't 10-hour days.
They were not 10-hour days, which I think anyone could live a life with a 10-hour day.
Yeah.
And I want to only work with like kids and dogs. Not that they have in their contract to be 10-hour days, but if anyone's listening and has a project dressing dogs, I'm all for it. Because it's just like you can.
Yeah. It's important to have.
So important.
I spent many, many, many years not having a life at all.
Yeah.
And then
right.
it just changed for me. I guess when I had my children,
Yeah.
it became much more important for me to make sure I found the balance and made sure they knew they're important, and they are.
Yes. And I
So,
think that's such a
yeah.
valuable thing to share too.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, and
So I think it's good that, I mean, in a way, I don't know, COVID's reset a lot of things for us. But
it
what
has- it
what
has-
else is what we want to talk about? Anything else you want to
What's
share?
Well, as far as what to answer your other question
Oh, yeah.
about what's next,
Sorry.
I don't. There's a couple things that are brewing that are
Okay.
very, very exciting that
Great.
I can't totally talk about yet, or that aren't totally firm, but I have my fingers crossed. And I'm so grateful to have done this and to have talked to you, because
Yeah.
you're obviously such an inspiration, and
Oh,
I've
thank
used
you.
several of your costumes on mood boards
Oh, I love it.
previously because
Thank you.
you just have such a great sense of balance and color and all of that. And that's
Thank you.
really great.
Well, mutual respect. I was
Yes.
really excited to get to sit down and talk to you.
Yes, it's so great because, like I was saying yesterday, I wish I had this when I was little, because I was just like so hungry for listening to other costume designers and
Mhm.
also just the support system of having a costume designer,
Yeah.
interviewing another costume designer is
I
so
know.
great.
Another small COVID gift. We made space and
Yes.
get to connect with each other
Absolutely.
in a way that we had never been able to do before. It's so
Yeah.
important.
It's so
And
important.
have, build each other up and support each other.
Absolutely.
Like, that is beautiful.
Yeah, like what you were saying with your relationship with Blue and Holla,
Mhm.
it's just so
Yeah,
neat.
The Minnesota crew.
Yes, and how random. I mean, I just love that.
I know,
I
it's
would never
cool.
think that Minnesota.
It's such an important part of my life,
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, because it's such a strange world we live in, and so to be able to bounce off these things that are happening, or just
Like the weird stuff that no one else would get.
no, exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
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 But-
So do you have an Instagram that you want to tell
Yes.
us about?
Sure. My Instagram, I'm active. I wouldn't say like I'm 100% active, but it's Colin Costumes. And my website is colinwilkes.com.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And we want to thank Colin for joining us today.
Thank you.
And I want to thank Eddie Marks, our sponsors. And I want to thank you all for joining us this week on Designing Hollywood. And you can follow us on Instagram at Designing Hollywood Podcast, at Marilyn Vance, or you can find me at Allison Fanger.
Thank you. And thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
And thank you, Marilyn, for putting this all together.
Thank you to our sponsor, Eddie Marks with ragvan.com. Ragvan is Hollywood's favorite place to rent fully equipped, high-quality trailers used by the entertainment industry to transport costumes and garments to and around filming sets in Hollywood. Also, thank you to our viewers. Be sure to follow Designing Hollywood Podcast on social media and subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Deezer, and our YouTube channel for complete past and current episodes.